Welcome to Turn Extension, a supplemental podcast for the Advanced Maneuvers YouTube channel.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Turn Extension. My name is Tony, or Polar Bear Cub on the forums.
Hey everybody, it's Kevin.
Hey everybody, it's Devin, Cutthroat Cure on the forums.
Hey guys, so today we are going to talk about, I guess first things first is we are starting a new recording night, so you'll probably see our podcast come out a little bit later on Tuesday, assuming I can get stuff edited in time. So it might be Tuesday, possibly Wednesday, just depending. So that's one thing. Two, with our new recording schedule, we are actually going to be able to see stuff that happened all the way up until the weekend. So like with this, we got to see WTC. We're probably not going to hit too much on WTC, but with tonight, we're really going to talk more about, just changes that are happening, changing of the guard, just really changes we've seen over the past, I guess, couple weeks and couple months. So who kind of wants to start us off with that?
I mean, I can start it off just because, I was able to watch a little bit of the WTC. I have a few contacts that were on the teams this year for America. As well as like Australia and stuff like that. And it was definitely interesting this year to, watch the games and, experience leading up to WTC. And then, now that it's immediately over, I mean, it just ended yesterday. Most of the players are just getting home sometime today. And we already have word of, a decent amount of players are actually stepping away from the game officially in their own standpoints.
Yeah, so it looked like from the America team, there's three people that, are stepping away. One was Tom Guan, who we knew well in advance. I think he had stated like good 6-7 months ago, he started selling off his armies because he's really getting into Magic the Gathering. And it sounds like Trevi the Great also has just recently talked about stepping away. I think he announced on his Twitter today. But it sounded like he wasn't completely stepping away from the game, just going to a more casual. So I don't know if his podcast is still going to be around. And then who was the third person?
Brian Marino, another WTC player.
Okay, so it seemed to be three players from the WTC, all American teams. I don't know the real reason why Brian is moving away from the game, and if he's completely stepping away, if he's going to a more casual play as well.
I think it's it's been alluded to, or we mentioned it, that it's a changing of the guard where you get a lot of high level players who step away from the game, and by virtue of the void that they create by leaving, you get an influx of new players to potentially fill that role. One of the common debates about changing of the guard though is do you equate the same level? If you take out top tier players and you replace them with the next line up, are they as top tier as before, or can they get to that point? I think one of the other impacts to it is that with Trevi stepping away, a lot of people will potentially argue with what I'm going to say, but one of the lead Signar champions is stepping away from the game. I mean, like he had Way of the Swan was his all Signar YouTube channel and blog. You had Storm Chamber, which was his all, he participated with two others as an all Signar podcast. With him stepping away, it's that double-edged sword of you lose a major Signar player who continuously kept hitting top tables in tournaments that he would go to, both convention-based and region-based. But you lose that thought initiator, that faction champion. But the other flip side of it is that a lot of times when a champion steps away, somebody else comes in and potentially brings in new ideas. So if you're looking for an extreme version of this scenario, if JVM were to stop playing tomorrow, who would step into that role as Legion faction champion, and what new ideas would they be bringing to the table?
And I think that's a solid point, at least that last part. I do agree that I think, as people switch out of the game, you're going to get, a different variety of individuals playing the game, so you're going to see, hopefully, a change of lists. as well as like new ideas circulating through. I don't necessarily agree that, hey, if these top people are stepping away, well, it's a lower tier that are coming in to take their place, because it very well could be just budding talent. I mean, before we talked about Chevy the Great, there was, other people before that, back in Mark 1, that, stopped playing afterwards, and I think going to see this more and more as you go through changes in, additions from Mark 2 to Mark 3. There was a lot of change. People have been less and less excited. Certain people have been less excited about it, but then other people have changed. I remember hearing about like Jarl beforehand, but not really as prolific as I have been over the past, 6 months or so. And, kind of just that change. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I mean, all throughout, like, this is the first year I think Germany has won. And 2 years ago, America was winning all the time. So it's not necessarily I don't think it's as bad of a change as it could be.
Now, while you guys were talking, it kind of brought up an interesting point in my head, or at least something I was thinking about, is the fact of, like, when you look at top tier players, it's like name two major, convergence players. Where you got Watts,
Watts and Aaron. I can't remember what Aaron's last name is.
Right, and then name up two Legion players.
JVM and JVM.
Exactly. Name two Signar players.
Well, I mean, you had Trevi the Great and you had Jarl.
But what I'm saying is that something I'm definitely noticing is that every faction kind of has that one person that's kind of leading it. And then you might have another person that kind of appears in the background. And the question is, for me, is not more or less is it a changing of the guard of like just play style and the ability to, but is it the fact that these newer people aren't showing up at as many events? I mean, you have Tom, Tom was a wild card. He kind of played a little bit of everything, a little bit of Circle, a little bit of Rat here and there, but he was able to make it to so many events. Watts, he goes to a lot of events. JVM is literally almost at every event. And you notice it because they're in there. People can look, what's this person playing? What's that person playing? You don't really see a lot of other names that are popping up as much at each event, like boom, 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 boom. Now, is that something that's going to change now with us losing, some of these major players? Like if Jacob would step down, today and say, hey guys, I'm just not really feeling on it. Just really want to focus on different aspects of my life. Can anybody really think of another person that's like, oh, well, now this person's going to really, have a chance to shine because they're always in that backlight? Or is it more or less that is it going to now become more or less like each tournament, then it's going to be like, who's going to be at this one? Because it seems like at most of these tournaments anymore, it always seems to be the same power crowd that kind of dominates or does the same thing, and then not too many other people that like really stand out.
I almost wonder if it isn't a situation where it for a while, and I'm going to disclaimer this with I live in the United States. For a while, it felt like the limelight was being held up by the American players, where it was always like, let's follow this American player. Let's, a lot of the champions were American-based. But now with the WTC becoming more exposure, you've got, the Facebook feeds are international in exposure and stuff like that. You've got the DE5 group that's does some of their own streamings and stuff like that. If it's not going to be a scenario where when we start looking for the next insert faction champion, that we're not going to be bound to, who's leading the U.S. convention, arena. Because obviously, for a lot of places, one of the recurring things is that I've heard from foreign players is that there aren't the robust, large convention stylings that happen as often. I think like a prime example is SmogCon was like one of the first leanings, and then now they got SmogCon and ClogCon and stuff like that over.
Well, SmogCon's not around anymore though.
Clog's not. Oh, that's right. It became Lock and Load UK or something like that.
Yeah,
or?
But that was actually disbanded. They only did 1 year of it. It looks like they completely stopped it.
Oh.
That was the last I saw.
They disbanded that, and then SmogCon was supposed to become the new version of UK UK lock and load.
Okay.
And it doesn't look like they're going to do that. And I'm not really sure about SmogCon either.
So I almost wonder if some of the limelight is being held because the United States has more of these big conventions than around, but maybe what we're seeing isn't necessarily a changing of guard so much as shifting of the spotlight away from the U.S. and to other countries, and these other countries are going to produce these new champions that we can follow. Profound.
I mean, look at Australia. I was talking, but my mute was on. Look at Australia. I mean, Australia brought up, darn it, who was it that was playing the Karchev list and just went balls to the walls, won all of Warmachine Weekend, like won the last chance qualifier and then took all of Warmachine Weekend?
I cannot remember the name.
He was playing Karchev. He was also on the Australian WTC team.
I'm really bad with Australian people.
Anyway, super cool dude. Anyways, long story short is like I'm really hopeful that with this new changing of the guard or whatever it is, it's exactly as you said, Kevin. Instead of us putting all this focus on these American events and American things, maybe we need to start adjusting ourselves to start looking at who is performing overall. I mean, and that's something where I'm going to mention another company here, Steamforge. I mean, they've done an amazing job. They have their tracking system that tells you at any point, where you place against other people in your area, other people in your country, other people in the world, which we don't have access to something like that through private tier.
Does that only look at like conventions, or does that look at local tournaments as well?
It looks at all events, all major events. Like if you host a major official event or like something like that, like I know they do the Fall Brawl at Huzzah Hobbies, which actually I've learned is the largest non-convention event held for Guild Ball, I think in the United States.
Wow.
Which is kind of, yeah, it's pretty crazy. Like Solus was telling me about it. But it's like they have that whole system where you can go on at any point and you can see who's number one in the United States, who's number one here and stuff. Like, how are you doing in the world, And it's like, sometimes I wish we had a little bit more of that just because, we have a steamroller packet that is unified across, the entire world. I just would like to see more, I guess, numbers on that. And I think that's one thing that's really exciting. I always get excited about with WTC ending is now we're going to get to see within the next week or two, we're going to get to see a lot of data about who played whom, how well they did, their averages. So that's always something to get really excited for when it comes to, WTC ending.
And I think it's an interesting thing, but I always take the WTC stuff with a grain of salt. I mean, the biggest issue is that, just the way how the format is, I mean, it's all a team tournament. So it's not really individualized as well. You're not always playing into your strength. Sometimes, you are the GOAT, where you are the one who has to go to the slaughter, so that the overall team wins. So I think that's a change. That's a difference with WTC. Also, I mean, with all these themes coming out, hopefully this week, we'll also see a difference in that, to where a lot of stuff that happened in WTC might be more invalidated, which for me, that's why I get more excited about, the Warmachine weekend, and honestly, hopefully with how this new lock and load is going to change, instead of looking at, doing the Iron Gauntlet the way it was before, maybe making how Iron Gauntlet should be now. It looks almost like the wintertime Warmachine weekend is now going to be. There's going to be a wintertime Warmachine weekend and like a summer Warmachine weekend, in essence. And I think that's going to show a lot more data.
So since you brought it up, and it was one of the things I definitely wanted to talk about in tonight's conversation if we started to run out of things to talk about otherwise. But since you brought it up, I'm going to talk about it earlier. What are your guys' thoughts on Privateers Press's Grimkin version of themes?
What do you mean, Grimkin version of themes?
Where they're taking 6 fucking months of hints and then they're going to do something. I feel like this has been the most annoyed I have been. Like, for me, like, Grimkin was something exciting because we got to see the models. We knew we were all getting new shinies, all these exciting new things. But with these theme lists, it's all stuff we already own, And it's like, it just feels like to me like they're hyping it up. We keep getting these insiders to give us little tidbits, hyping it up, and then we still have no information on when to expect them. Like I had somebody say, "Oh, we're going to see him Friday," being this last week, and of course, we got an insider that had a single faction in it. So of course we knew, nope, that wasn't it. Because they're going to put the whole theme change into an insider. So then everybody's like, "Oh, is it this Friday?" And I remember that when they had spoken about the CID and some of these other changes, they had definitely said that they were going to make it so that we were looking at 6 weeks max after the end of a CID cycle before we saw the changes. And I mean, we just finished up the 12 days of Christmas, correct?
Yeah, we won't get that until December.
Right. So it's like,
So
It could be worse. They could be hiding videos. Instead of doing insiders, they could be hiding videos on the new themes played backwards.
So, all right, that would be actually kind of amusing. So I guess the first thing I'll talk about is like the CID thing. I do remember them talking about like the 6-week turnaround. I think that was unrealistic because I think at the time when they were talking about the CID, I think they were still talking about putting out theme books. Now that they're putting that stuff out in the no quarters, that really hinders what they can do. And that's also, you can kind of say it's going to slow down the CID process significantly because if they're going to do, hey, here's a new thing, this is going to be in the no quarter, they're effectively going to dedicate that entire thing to a no quarter. The only thing that really changes that up is the 12 days of Christmas, 12 factions of Christmas. That doesn't look like that's going to be in a no quarter. But we know that the Signar one that happened in July, that is coming out in the September, which is in 2 days.
It was the end of June because don't forget the Troll one was still happening during Lock and Load.
You're right. Okay. Yeah, so the end of June was when the Signar one was. And now we know for the Troll one, it's going to be coming out in the November issue of No Quarter Prime. So that's really going to hinder it. So I think the issue is that Privateer Press sometimes gets ahead of themselves. They say things and then like, oh, shit, no, let's actually do it this way. Which, it's happened a couple times. They came out a whole new edition. It's a whole change of the guard for Privateer Press. So they're still kind of learning new things, and that's kind of where it goes back and forth one. For the CID, for the themes in particular, I understood why we were getting teased beforehand because they did not want to drop that after the list submission for WTC. So they stated, hey, we're going to wait until after list submissions, after WTC is played, and then we're going to drop this afterwards. So I get that, but I really wish they would have then released the themes today. And I that was my argument all the way up until today is, hey, well, it's because they're waiting for WTC to be over. Just kind of respecting the players so that they can play those lists as they're valid. And then once WTC is over, they'll come out with new stuff. But kind of after today, I'm not sure why they're still teasing us.
I guess the thing that irritates me isn't the fact that they change their minds or that things change. I mean, situations happen. I work in an industry where, something could change today that was completely the same yesterday, and you have to repurpose the whole thing. But with Privateer Press, it's like they say something, which is fine, and we get excited, which is fine, and then they have to change it because something doesn't mean it. But then they just assume that we as the players, we as the the consumer, are just going to go, oh, okay, this is what happened. And one of the things that have really been, a lot of people said recently was, oh my God, after Lock and Load, look at how open they're being. Look at how much they're giving us, Yeah. And I've felt like with this themes, it's completely reverted back. They're being super secretive. We have to wait till an insider. The insider's giving you 30% of the information, but maybe you don't know exactly what's going to be included. Like I haven't seen an insider where it's like, here's a theme, and it literally gives you everything, And I know they're waiting because if they're just holding it off to let it drop, they're already giving you 90% of the information, and people are already using the information they assume because of what was in there to try something, and then getting pissed off about it. Like there's so many people right now that are trying like the Northkin lists with basically some of the information we got plus other stuff, and then going, okay, this sucks because of this, or this rocks because of this, when you really don't know what's going on.
And I can see that, and I think it goes both ways because I think they are being more open than the 30% of, hey, this is what the list is. Like, I am 99% confident I know everything that goes into my new convergence theme list. Like, I'm positive I know, hey, this is what it allows. It allows pretty much everything except for the TEP, and these are the benefits that I get from it. Like, so that doesn't concern me so much because, hey, that was released through there. I also might be a little bit more biased towards it because I'm assuming with my convergence, I'm only getting the one theme. In Signar, I pretty much have all my themes. And looking at past, hey, what you've been doing in the past, whatever that last little bit I get in the CID, which for Trenchers, it looks like it was say the exact same. And I'm assuming with my Sons of the Tempest, hey, that's going to say the exact same when these themes drop, whatever was in the last little bit of the CID. So that's kind of why I'm a little bit more biased on is my stuff's already pretty much out. I don't know how it feels for the people, who like, you don't know, hey, what is this model going to be in this team and what's this going to do? And that's kind of just where I think they are being open, but there's also not that one focal place where they can really talk about it more like they used to have with the forums. Like, in the forums was a really good place where at the end of the day, it was good to get centralized information out there, right? Because they could do the posts and then you could talk to people on it. Kind of nowadays with everything being on the Facebook, it's a lot more dispersed. It's not as easy, I think, to track down the information. A lot more stuff tends to get lost.
I'm going to ask a question, and this is kind of to Devin's point. If you're going to produce an insider, and that insider is releasing, we'll lowball it, 70% of the content that's in, or 70% of the benefits that's in the theme, these aren't going through CID. They're as finished as PP is going to do them. What's the harm in just releasing them? Like, do an insider and give the people the theme and call it done.
It's like what I said before. Up until today, when they released that Circle one, up until that point, they made it a point to say, hey, we're going to hold back on that. We're either going to try to release this before the list submission goes into effect for a WTC, or we're going to wait until after WTC is over. It's either going to be one or the other. The only reason why they did that dynamic update beforehand was they said, hey, guys, this is going to go into effect before WTC is actually played, but we want to give you guys enough advance notice, say this is going to affect. We just haven't solidified all the wording on the cards yet.
I mean, but then in that same statement, then they release, hey, here's going to be a Crix. Here is the Crix Dream theme where you get Carapace on all of your jacks.
Well, I think it's because they still want to make sure people are getting excited about it. Like I said, like when I've read these theme posts, I feel very confident. I know everything that's in that list. I know everything that's about that list. If something was mistyped, like even with the Circle one today, it said, oh, hey, we forgot to put this in. It's +1 to your starting roll, right? Which, a side note, I think it's like, hey, everyone gets +1 to your starting roll nowadays. So, fuck it, everyone gets the same thing. But that's a side rant. No, but I feel like they're putting this stuff out there, so it's like, hey, guys, here's the exciting thing, so you can kind of see this, but we're not going to make it official yet because we don't want pretty much people to get pissed at these lists that are already locked in, that they can't go and change it. That's my 2 cents on it, though. That's why I think up until this point, that's why they were doing it.
But then once again, they just told everybody, hey, Crix players, here is a list where every jack gets Carapace. You know what I'm saying? Like, that alone right there, if I was playing Crix and I was going, man, I really wish I had a heavy armor skew for my team, in Crix, like I'm having to play either dude spam or this, like, whether you're releasing it or not, whether you're giving the last 30% of the theme or whatever, you're still, as a WTC player, you're probably reading that because you want to stay in the know, and whether or not they're saying, here's the other 30%, there's so much stuff that they have at Privateer Press that they could talk about. They don't have to talk about the new themes, but yet they've made it a point every single week to delay the themes, which they're saying that they're doing in order to not offend or make the WTC players, I wish I had that, or why didn't I have that, or start thinking about that. But then they release 70% of the information, which is usually enough information to go, man, I really wish I had that. What else does it do? And I guess that's where I come from in it, is that I just definitely feel like it's been a bad, it's left a bad taste in my mouth concerning themes, just because of the fact that it's like they, a lot of hints, when they could have just said, hey, we're going to release these things, talk about everything else, but, and make it a point to say, hey, we're holding off up until WTC's done. Here is the date. I mean, if they're saying that the only reason that they're holding off is WTC, then give us a date that is exactly after WTC. Say the Friday when WTC is done, here you go. We're going to give them to you. But everybody's still going, when are we going to get them? People are still posting, hey, when are those theme lists coming out? Because nobody knows.
No, and I agree with you on that. I think that is a little frustrating part where they're not saying, hey, specifically this is the day. And I'm wondering if it's because they need to make sure they're not 100% sure, hey, is this all going to be uploaded into War Room in time? Is this all going to be uploaded into like whatever cards need to change? Because they're gonna have the card printout. So hey, you can print out these cards if this thing changed, like with the Gun Mage one. Like if they're inside theme, well then now all of a sudden they have like Pistolier, right? So it's a massive update to War Room. So they're probably not 100% positive whenever it's actually going to be actually all incorporated. So they probably realistically could not give a certain date. I just think there's a lot of moving parts in the background that we don't necessarily know. That makes it a lot harder because they're probably going to give us about 30 to 40 themes, not including updating the themes that are already out there to include the mercenaries, either unit, solo, or battle engine or whatever. So it's probably closer to 50 to 60 themes that are either getting updated or put out brand new that we just don't know about.
I thought they were only doing basically one per faction.
They're doing a lot more than one per faction. They're going to make it to where every single unit is supposed to have models in it. I mean, Crix alone, we've seen, 3 different themes come out during that time? Convergence, we've only seen 1. Scorn, we've seen 2, I believe. So they're giving. I want to say every faction except for probably Minions and Convergence will probably have on average about 4 to 5 themes per faction, and that's a lot of themes across effectively 10. Let's say 10 factions. So that right there is, if you're getting 4 to 5, that's 50 themes right there. They either have to be updated or completely put in brand new.
I don't know. It just seems like they're putting too much into one basket right off the bat, and then I think it's something where it's one of our major conversations have always been like, do they have the people to properly test this? Do they have the people to properly do this?
That is a concern on my end as well.
Especially with the CID process, one of the things that we're saying, that one of the major selling points of CID is, well, we know that they're getting properly tested. We know that they're being, looked at by regular players who play a lot and then, put back in with comments. But with these themes, which, let's say we even cut half of what you're saying. So let's say, you're saying there could possibly be 50, but let's say there's even 25. 25 themes is ridiculous for a company who has 100 employees, roughly, 100 employees. And you're saying that 1/4 of those employees have to handle a different theme, which each theme has at the minimum 4 different sections that affect the different models in different ways.
Well, keep in mind, that's 100 employees. That's not 100 play testers. There's different overheads and stuff like that don't even get involved in the actual game. They're the accountants and HR and all that other crap. They're not going to be involved. So even if you're being extremely generous, you're talking 50 employees maybe?
We'll see, and they still might. We don't know 100% if the actually playtesters were actually disbanded. The external playtesters. I don't think anywhere was stated that if they were specifically disbanded. All we knew is that the judge program changed and press gangers are gone.
I know they
at
were
this point, the moderators aren't even disbanded. I'm still a press press moderator.
I know that the person in charge of the playtesters was fighting to keep the playtesters. Now, whether or not they kept them or not, I don't know, but I know that it was. They were on the chopping block, and I know the person who was in charge of the playtesters was fighting to keep a hold of them, which is good. It's good to know, and hopefully that happens. But still, even if that happens, I don't think they have 100 playtesters, and you're literally talking about every single faction in the game, which is 12, 13 factions now, except for Grimkin.
Not including Grimkin, we have 12 factions.
Okay, so 12 factions. You're looking at 12 factions with about at least bare minimum 100 models apiece. And you're talking 25 different lists. Let's say each one gets 2. Like, I'm being very generous here with your numbers. We got 2, 100. You're looking at like 1,000 possible combinations of different rules effects per faction.
I don't think it's that broad because I think a lot of these themes are more selective. You have your Signar theme
that it uses every unit.
But it doesn't. But that's why there's probably 4 to 5 themes per faction. Like I said,
So
like Signar ones, right? Signars, like I have trenchers, right? Only trenchers are in there. So you do a select focus on the trenchers. What interactions can these have? The biggest issue that they had, I think that the 3 or 4 that we saw go in the CID were probably the ones that were the least play tested, which we could see. And the only one that was truly like broken was the minions one, because it had so many different warlocks that could be attached to it. It was both, it was just too broad of a warlock. So then they had one warlock that kind of broke the entire thing. So I think that's one of the benefits of having that broad, that select of like a theme.
I guess for me, it's just the thought process, and maybe it's just because, I've been with the company long enough, and I'm not going anywhere. Like, I love this company. I'm going to play the game. I'm actually going to play the game more now than I have for the last 2 years. But how many times did we feel like something was unfair when it was a theme list with one caster? Now you have every theme list having access to every caster. That's an unimaginable amount of combinations of different things when you're looking at rules, and I just don't feel that you appropriately can play test something that large with the limited resources.
Well, so I'm gonna put it into perspective for you for by picking on trolls as an example.
Yep.
You can't expect the Armageddon scenario of everything's going to be broken as soon as the lists come out. How long did it take before Ruins of War became a thing? How long before Elemental Communion became a thing? How long before Meat Mountain became a thing? They became a thing years after they were released to the general public.
I think even Ghost Fleet just recently, when that came out, I think initially it had a bad backlash.
So I think could we have Armageddon scenarios? Yes. But I think Privateer Press may be hedging a bet on, we release it now, we get everybody to be able to play with whatever models they have, and then let's, proactively try and address things before they become a problem. Now, they're not going to get it all. They're not even going to close to get it all. But I don't think it's a scenario of as soon as they release them that they're going to, the world will come to an end because all the lists will become broken and everything will be bad. I think it's going to be a scenario of the community will have to find it. And Privateer Press has even come out and said they're taking a very slow approach to addressing things. So if something does come out broken day one, then it's on us as a community to try and fix it. And if Privateer Press sees that we struggle with it, then they'll address it then.
Unless you're Haley 2.
But couldn't they have solved
Haley
that
2's
with...
had years before Privateer Press addressed it. Calm down.
Yeah. I'm just saying, they literally put into, and as I said, we all know I'm a huge Privateer Press fanboy. That's not even a joke. But it's one of those things. They have a system in place which seems to finally be working, which would have solved a lot of issues, and you have the thing that's going to introduce the most amount of changes and the biggest amount of changes since we switched over to a new edition, and they've wanted no community help.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine.
No, and I do agree with you. I think it came to where they were like, hey, we either work on getting this all out, or we go through the CID. And honestly, I agree with you on that. I feel like there should have just been, hey, let's do a theme CID. Let's do a 2-week theme CID. Or you might have to even do more than 2-week theme CID. That might have to be a month-long theme CID. And then afterwards, hey, guys, 6 weeks. That would have been a great time for us. 6 weeks from now, we'll get this out there, because let's just do any final changes to see if anything is ridiculous out there. And I think
that probably a month-long CID in place of trenchers. I mean, we did a super long CID on trenchers.
No, it was only 2 weeks.
It felt so much longer.
I know, because I like talking about trenches and you were so angry
No,
about
but
it.
I mean,
I think since Grimkin was the only month-long one. I think everything else was 2 weeks.
Trolls was 3 weeks because they
Was-
extended it because of lock and load.
Okay, yeah, so I believe the scenario, the Steamroller 2017 was 2 weeks, I believe. Trenchers was 2 weeks, Trolls was 3 weeks, and then this last one was 2 weeks. What I think they should have done is instead of doing the Christmas, maybe push that off, because that's not going to come out till later anyways. Instead, probably do a CID on themes, and that probably was
Unless things in the Christmas one are major contributors to these new themes, which is why they may have suggested some of the things, because if they came out with a new theme that had all the new dragon or ogrekin, whatever, from Legion, and you don't know new ogrekin are coming,
That's
or
true,
what
yeah.
they do. It just, I don't know. I felt like before lock and load, or even, like with us, when they mentioned this huge thing about lock and load or whatever, they could have made it a huge deal to basically go off, start the themes at lock and load, had them properly tested, had people trying them, talk about them. We knew we were getting new models. Let's get even excited about new models and new theme lists, and then actually play tested the theme lists. And I don't know, maybe they're just a little bit too bound right now, but I just feel like I'm not expecting an Armageddon situation, but I definitely feel like if this is the one thing that you're saying is going to envelop the game, they're saying, if you're playing competitive, if you want to be a good gamer, you're going to have to use themes no matter what. Like that is a verbatim, basically what they want us to do.
Yes.
So then why, and then they're getting us excited. They've dedicated the last 10 insiders to this. It's created the most uproar with people going like, oh, it's crap, it's great, it's crap, it's great. When this, to me, and this is my personal opinion, this was the most prime ability to use CID to the fullest extent of its abilities. And I just feel like it's a missed opportunity. Maybe I'll even create a little Craigslist post, missed opportunities.
Oh my god. That's a beautiful way to wrap it up. That's actually the name of the podcast for this episode.
Yeah.
Episode 40, whatever, missed connection or missed opportunities. Craigslist.
Craigslist missed opportunity.
Yeah.
Yep. That's perfect. I think I kind of want to leave it on that. I know, Kevin, you really haven't. We've kind of been bullying this whole conversation. What are your thoughts on it, actually, before we wrap everything out?
Shut up and play.
I like it. So, yeah, I guess with this one, I'm interested to hear everyone's feedback on that. What do you guys think about? I know we kind of started changing the guard and we went into this whole theme topic. Let me hear what your thoughts are on it. Post it below on the YouTube or on our Facebook group. I think it's to be an interesting conversation. There's a good chance we might continue this on until next week, because hopefully this week we do see the themes drop. So our next episode, we can talk more in depth about this. Were our fears justified? Were they not? Like, did they just do one last teaser? Now they're dropping it on Tuesday when we drop this podcast.
Is Devin going to have to eat crow?
Hey, I had to eat crow a couple episodes ago. It's your turn now.
Hey, let's go.
But all right, guys. I want to thank everyone for listening to another episode of Turn Extension. Have a good one.